Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight and being here for our first of hopefully a few more Nimiipuu Speaker Series events. Before we get started, I would like to ask Mary Jane Miles to come forward and offer us a prayer.
Creator, we just come to your throne as a Nimiipuu, your people. We thank you for this speaker series that will highlight those things that we have withstood and endured tonight. We thank you for the panelists that have come forward to talk about lives that were not very, very good due to the disease called tuberculosis. Sometimes we forget how strong we are and the survivors that we are. And this particular topic will remind us that we are very strong people. And our strength comes from you because you are the Creator. And we thank you for this opportunity to bring this forward and to talk frankly about it. We thank you for this opportunity that has been provided by the Nez Perce tribe and those that are involved in the cultural aspects of our Nimiipuu people. Bless our efforts, and we say this in your Son's name, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Mary Jane. So just to give a little bit of background on this Nimiipuu Speaker Series, this idea came about approximately a year ago, right before COVID hit. And so it got put on the back burner, as did many things. Flash forward, we decided it was time to bring it back up and see how we could make this happen. It seemed only right to start off with a very timely subject, and that being of pandemics and diseases that the Nez Perce people have faced over the years. As you all know, there's been several tragedies and losses, and it's nothing we haven't seen before. And one thing that they all have in common is the Nez Perce people have overcome in facing that adversity. So tonight we invited these three panelists to come forward and share some information and history based on that subject. So the title of the series tonight is Life Experience with Pandemic and Disease. And I have these three folks here, and we're just going to go ahead and get started with Nakia Williamson. Nakia Williamson graduated from Lewis Clark State College with a Bachelor of Science in Social Science. He gained much of his knowledge and education concerning the traditional way of life of the Nimiipuu from Nimiipuu culture bearers throughout his lifetime. He has worked in the area of cultural resources management for 20 plus years, currently serving as the program manager for the Nez Perce tribe. Nakia conducts and coordinates technical consultations with various federal and state agencies such as U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Bonneville Power of Administration, 13 National Forests, and Bureau of Land Management, just to name a few. Please welcome Nakia.
Katiao inem wanigt tutoka wanigt was epilik hilum kawat kawako ki tamapaiks nunam oikala tukwanawat ki kalawat ka oikala piam ki tots piamkin. Again, I'd just like to thank the organizers of this event to given the opportunity to share knowledge and share the collective knowledge that our people have maintained over generations of time. And as was mentioned previously by Kaylani and alluded to by our elder here, Mary Jane Miles, is that it's very true that the Nez Perce people, the Nimiipuu, have endured many cataclysmic activities that have impacted the lives of our people. And such was the case prior to the arrival of the new people to this land. And as with many people, I think we've always been a people that have prepared for those challenges and tried to meet those challenges. And it was through the belief of those that had the knowledge and could understand the cycles of life that they were able to navigate that very difficult time. And knowing that there was a change, big changes that was coming to this land, coming to our people, because changes to the land are changes to our people. And because of that, there was a series of prophecies that were foretold about these huge changes that were coming, and one of them was the coming of disease that was unknown to our people, unknown to this land, unknown to the Western Hemisphere. And beginning in 1513, some of the first Spanish explorers, Juan de Soto and many others that came afterwards, that Ponce de Leon, Juan Ponce de Leon, de Soto, and many others that came afterwards made initial contact around the area of what we now know as Florida and the Gulf Coast. And when they first went there, they encountered not scattered tribes of people, but literally cities of thousands, tens of thousands of native people. And when some of those came back only decades later, that those had been utterly eradicated. And we know because of the very large and dynamic trade networks that were established across North America, reached down into South America, up into the north, that those trades also brought those trade networks and those trade routes from the southwest, the southern plains that came up to the Great Salt Lake, what we now know as the Great Salt Lake, and to the upper Snake River Plain, eventually into the areas known and occupied, such as Kapkapala, now known as Boise, Idaho, and into Sakunma up to Hell's Canyon. Now, those are the first places in our occupied territory that the Nimiipuu were impacted by those first waves of disease, measles, and later smallpox that came and impacted those our ancestors that were living in those areas. And there were many stories that were passed down. There was one man that dreamt in a dream, and it was revealed to him that there was a tall man that was walking from a distance, and as he got closer, he noticed that he had sores on his face, and the man pointed off to the side, and then he awoken from the dream, and he had that dream 3 times, and it wasn't long after probably one of the early epidemics of smallpox that came through around 1780. It's also documented with the establishment of Fort Vancouver that happened very early on during the fur trade by Hudson Bay, that other communities were just utterly destroyed. And some of the records that were kept at that point says that there, somewhere just west of Hood River down to what is now Portland, to the mouth of the Columbia River, that there was some 10,000 native people that lived in that area. And by 1843, after some of those initial smallpox epidemics that swept through, that there were only 500 that were left. And so that gives you a sense in some of the estimates in terms of North America that 50% is maybe a low number of how many native people throughout this continent and beyond were decimated by those epidemics. And so, of course, these were great challenges that our people had to face, and there were great challenges that had to be met with a variety of ways to navigate those processes and to navigate those issues that had come up. And for myself, thinking of that history and the knowledge that has been, really the collective knowledge of our people that has brought us to this point, we know that our people have endured many of these sorts of scourges that have plagued our people. And And even indeed, when the Lewis and Clark expedition came in 1805, that's how they were first described, as a kind of an obscure reference to like a disease, and because they knew that there was something that was affecting them that was not coming from this land. Our people realized and understood that at that particular time. So around 1840, there was 1838 to 1840, there was another strain of smallpox that came through, and it affected and impacted a lodge of 17 Nez Perces that were in Kusaina under the leadership of the historical figure known as Ellis, and their village site was utterly wiped out. Later on, some of those that were coming from this side of the mountains over there came upon their village, and it was just like somebody had just left it just standing, and then they understood what had happened at that particular time. And so as time went on, these experiences were definitely greatly felt and understood by our people. And I don't think we really have a really strong estimate in terms of what those particular impacts were specifically to our people, but we know that the first diseases that came up the Hell's Canyon utterly changed the way of life. Many of those villages that are down on the southern part of the Hell's Canyon were abandoned, and people were displaced, and so trying to escape that disease, and basically they were trying to socially distance at that time, trying to get away, and they understood that it was being passed. So that's a concept that was not new to us, and it utterly changed the way of life, how they took care of themselves, how they even took care of their loved ones when they passed. And that's something that, again, we've seen come to reality now. And myself, I know that as well, because many of those sites down there in the Hells Canyon area had been looted, had been desecrated, and sometimes even by archaeologists early on would dig up those remains. And I've been part of my 25 or 26 years, been a part of many of those reburials that we reburied those back into the places that they came from. And one of the things that changed at that time was even the burial practices of our people. You'll see burials that had happened, and you'll find them right in the middle of what we call the El Witas or Hitamis, what the archaeologists refer to as the semi-subterranean pit house. There'll be a burial right in the center of that. And in my mind, I think that's what was happening, that they had no time to bury them in a proper place and the proper area that would normally happen, and so they just left them in those homes. And I know this because when we do those reburials, we would, part of our way in which we conduct those is we go back to the place, and it's our law to bring them back to where they came from, the specific site, if we can locate it. And we would bring them back and rebury them right in the middle of these depressions that are still visible on the landscape, where those semi-subterranean pit houses are still there in some of those areas. And so, these were the sorts of things that our people had experienced. Years later, there were other visions that you might say. There was another man that had this dream twice, that in his dream he looked all the way to the east, and it's like he could see all the way to the ocean. And in his dream, that the land was blackened, and it was coming to him. And it came, at that time he was in what is now Kuski, Idaho, or Tukupa, and it came towards right to that point within a half a mile of where he lived, and he didn't understand what it meant, and he had that dream a second time. And it wasn't not long after that, it was 1918, when the flu epidemic came, and he said that the flu came and was within a half a mile of his house, and people to the west of him many had perished, and those people that were in his household and beyond were able to keep from getting infected. And even today, if you notice some of those old time cemeteries, there's one in north side of Kamai where if you look at it, it belongs to a particular family, and all the dates are 1918, and so whole families had passed at that time. And, again, so these experiences were very traumatic to our people, traumatic. You can imagine the amount of knowledge that was lost, the amount of knowledge about the land and about our way of life, and the ways in which our people dealt with those was a collective way where a lot of the men and a lot of the women would get together and they would get in a sweat house and they would contemplate and pray and try to understand how we can put an end to this. And they had different ways. One of the ways that was revealed to them during the smallpox is it was revealed to them to use juniper. Then they boiled those little berries and the leaves and they made a tea, and they said many were saved. And they would just contemplate and what collectively, because our society came to a crossroads in which, what do we do? And so they found their solace and they found their strength in one another. And so, you look to today and what we've experienced, that for me, we understand from our history and we understand from what our people have retained. And I think that's really truly the beauty of our culture and our way of life, is that the way we're structured, the way our households are structured, the way our culture is structured, and the way knowledge is passed, that knowledge that has happened years ago only seems fairly recent to us because of how that knowledge is transmitted from generation to generation. So things that happened in 1877 or 1855 are of recent memory to us. And so we're able to remind ourselves of these challenges that happen, whereas the broader society, because nobody was alive, or most people aren't alive back in 1918, and I wasn't here and experienced that. It's ancient history. It's something that the society has forgot about. But for us, it's recent history for us, very recent history, because of our elders and the elders that lived in our household talked about. Even myself, grew up with two elders, one in my household that were in the sanitarium in Lapway. Many of us grew up with people in our household. So that seemed like a real thing to me because I grew up with those people. It wasn't just something I read about or something I heard about. And so what we know about these very traumatic times in terms of what our people underwent, and this history being so new to us, new in a sense of how we remember it, how we recall it, that it's a time for us to reflect. It's a time for us to come together and reflect on ourselves. And what our people understood is that what's happening to the land, what's happening to the environment has impacts to us and vice versa. I think a lot of people understand that when we go out and do something to impact resources, that, maybe we're taking away resources or taking away opportunity for someone else or our future generations. But we also know the way we comport ourselves with one another and in relationship to the land and people around us, that has impacts that go beyond what we understand in terms of modern science. And I think that's what our people understood. They were able to understand these natural processes in a way that allowed us to persist on this land for tens of thousands of years. And so to me, it's a great time of reflection and understanding what's going on in the world and a lot of the upheaval and things that are out there, a lot of the negativity. And we know when those things come that after it, there's going to be something else that's going to follow after that. So this is a time of recollection for us. It's a time of taking stock in who we are and how we maintain our relationships with one another and to the land first and foremost, that those impacts, the land has a way of cleaning itself. And that's what our way of life tells us, that when things get out of balance, the land is going to, in the songs it says it's going to turn over. It's going to turn over and clean itself. And someone who was brought up around church in the formative years of my life, that's what the Bible says too. The great flood and some of the other cataclysmic activity that happened to other nations. And so, we know these truths to be evident, and we know these things, and this is the time we live in. And so it's a great time of us to take stock in our lives and how we comport ourselves to one another. And, you know, for me, that's what this time has really been about. And I think the ability to understand what our people had gone through, and that is true, we are resilient, but what makes us resilient is that those deep understandings that we have of how life works and the laws of this land, and how we are supposed to conduct ourselves in relationship to those things. So, you know, that's kind of what I wanted to bring out at this time, and to, you know, again, think about historically what had happened to us, those experiences that we've had, and those experiences that we are having now. And I think it's also, you know, we've seen a lot of things that have happened, you know, in terms of how we are viewing other people in the world and how they are dehumanized the same way our people were dehumanized. And I think when the society and the world is faced with such a impact that affects everybody, that it breaks it down to the very common denominator of recognizing the humanity that we all share as people wherever we live, because this is not just impacting one people or another. And I remember hearing not long ago people make offhanded jokes about coughing on an Indian and then wiping them out, and yeah, that might have been funny in a comedic sense, but now I think people understand what that truly means, you know, and how that's probably not as funny anymore. But again, you know, I think, you know, it's these sorts of things that we need to take stock of and understand, and again, to recognize the humanity that we have, not only in ourselves and the people around us, but those people that we share this land and this earth with. And I think that's really the take-home message that our way of life teaches us, and what our experiences have taught us, and what really has maintained our people for tens and thousands of years, generations of our ancestors that have persisted on this land. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring out on this night and this day, and to listen to what our elders here have to say. So, you know, I'm glad to serve in this portion, and to provide whatever knowledge that we have, because, you know, the knowledge that we have is only repeating what has been told, some of the things that we have experienced. But for me, it's repeating the time spent with older people that have blessed me with knowledge, and we have to share that knowledge for the benefit of all of us, because it belongs to all of us. So again, katsiao, and I look forward to hearing what the other panelists will have to say, and their experiences that they carry on the behalf of our entire tribe and on behalf of this land. So katsiao, thank you.
Thank you, Nakia. Up next, we have Mary Jane Miles. Mary Jane Miles was born on the Nez Perce Reservation between Lapwai and Spalding to Davis Miles and Elsie Rubin. Following high school, Mary Jane attended junior college at Bacone, Lewis Clark State College, Fuller Theological Seminary, and Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. During this time, she earned her Bachelor of Science in Social Science, her Master of Divinity, and became a Doctor of Theology. Mary Jane has worked for a number of tribal programs and served on the Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee for 2 terms. She is a mother of 3 children, plus others she claims as her own, a grandmother of 4, and a great-grandmother of 2. Please welcome Mary Jane.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I was really happy that Kehlani is putting this series together on tuberculosis. I was talking to her during our COVID-19 that she was on the EOC, and I was really happy that they gathered together to take care of us in a way that our mental health would stay put. I remember my Aunt Elizabeth Miles, the sister of my father, David Miles, spent over 30 years in the sanatorium, first at Lapway and then in Albuquerque with tuberculosis. That's a long time. And I'm so happy that I'm giving my personal history after General Counsel. I wouldn't have wanted to campaign on these cards that I'm going to say to you, because they reveal a lot of my worldly life, and how I got in trouble with tuberculosis. In the 70s, about the mid-70s or so, I was out in the world. And first I want to acknowledge my friend here, Catherine. I am so happy that she has gone through what she has successfully the past couple of years. We were really worried about what was happening with her health, but that's not the only thing she's gone through. So I really feel she's a really tough lady, and I admire that. And I have another little friend down there that's pretty tough too, and we were known as the Supremes in our younger days, so I just want to acknowledge that. Can't forget that. We were all out in the world together, and my alcoholism led me to a very poor lifestyle with hardly any eating and a lot of drinking, which led to using one bottle maybe for the drink in a crowd, which led to getting tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a disease that you don't really think you have anything, because you're not feeling, you're feeling okay. You just get a little bit tired, but I thought it was just from excessive drinking that I was so doggone tired. Well, the clinic told me that I needed to stay away from people, and I didn't. I kept going to the bar in Lapway, and Keith Hendricks picked me up and took me across the street to the jailhouse and quarantined me there. And then the CHR, which was June Green, I asked her if I could use her name, and she said, why, sure, because that was her job. And her sister Terry took me up to Spokane, to Edgecliff Hospital. I was very angry. I thought they were railroading me into something that I didn't like, because I felt good. And they kept me there for 9 months, and they wanted to do surgery take some of my lung, and I said, absolutely not. I don't have anything wrong with me. So after 9 months, and after good eating and everything, I went to the craft room and did a lot of exercises. I felt pretty good, so they let me go, and I went right back to where I had come from, and continued my ugly drinking career. And I was diagnosed again a few months later with tuberculosis again. And this time my family took me up and talked some sense into me, but I was angry again, very angry, because I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I'm telling everybody, what are you doing to me? You're keeping me a captive. So just go ahead and take it out. Well, they operated on me in the middle of February, and the snow was really bad up at Spokane, and everything was shut down. The roads were shut down. The only one with me was a beautiful lady from Fort Hall. She sat with me. But before that, I had been in several abusive relationships, and my face was a mess. I had big scars here on my mouth and under my eye. So the doctor said, while I was under the knife of the lung extraction, that he could fix my face. I thought that was a blessing, because when I came out, then my face was nice and smooth. And you can see a little bit of it today, but not very much. So I was really grateful that they did that for me. So I wasn't too mad at them, but I still was very angry that they had to take part of my lung out. So actually, the first visit was 9 months, and the second visit was about 5 months in the hospital. Meanwhile, all these things are playing around me in the 70s, and I really feel that they added to my distress. I had a son, a younger son than from my older son, and I was having trouble with the courts. And one of his grandmas said that she could take him. And they came and looked at her house, and they said, no, she can't have him because she doesn't have running water. So the state will take him. But when you come out of the hospital, I will give you things to do, and you can get your son back. And Jewel was the social worker. And I came back, and she said, get a job. So I got a job. Get your own home. So I got my own home. And then they took my son away with his unfit mother. I was an alcoholic. About that time then, 3 things happened that really made me angry. They discovered a pill that you could take, and you didn't have to go to the hospital if you had TB. You could take your pill with a glass of water. And then the first lady in the U.S. Washington said, alcoholism is not a downfall, it's a disease. Yay! Well, I had already quit drinking, but it's a disease. I had a disease. And then most of all, what I still really fight for is ICWA, which means they cannot adopt our Indian children off the reservation. My son came back to visit me, and he was with me for about 3 years. Then he came in and he told me, he said, I can't live here. I don't understand this life, this reservation life. So he left. But he's married and he's got a big family, and he pops in once in a while. He's got a lot of relatives here, and he knows who they are. So that's a blessing for me. But 3 things happening about the time that I was plagued by tuberculosis. So these diseases do not just wreck your personal body. They seem to go out in waves and wreck everything. When we were going through this COVID-19 stuff, it felt like it was back to that time again where you are completely helpless about what is going on around about you. But it's not just you, it's your neighbors as well. And it seems like the Totokan, the indigenous people, were really susceptible to tuberculosis. And it's something in their makeup that, the genetic makeup, that makes them so, and it felt like it was a punishment for us to be hospitalized for so many years and yet feeling good, except very tired. I had to quit going to the sweat house because I have partial lung removal, and it's not very good for me to sweat anymore. This anger that I had stayed with me for a long time, and it took me a lot of visits to the behavioral health to talk through my anger just from the tuberculosis, and to look up what it actually was. After I saw Richard Storch for 3 good years and talked about all of this stuff of why me, because it really did feel like it was just to me. You know, everybody looked so happy and carrying on with their life and working. Why me? And I'm realizing that it's just not me. I was always a good worker. I always worked somewhere in the tribe, and I like to work. So people would go to bat for me. And there's something about my personality that people kind of want to take care of me. I thought it was self-pity for a while there, and I think I used it to the hilt when I was drinking. But I think it's just something in my nature that people want to take care of me. My friend here took care of me for a long time. I'm not going to tell you how she took care of me and while we were out and about. So when I was out of the hospital, then Ann Jewell, my social service worker, tells me to get a job, and I do this and do that, and I jump through the hoops. But it doesn't matter. I'm declared an unfit mother. All of these things make me who I am today. When I ran for council, when I became an ordained minister, it's all part of me. And I went through it. And it helps me understand the brokenness of people that I get to interact with. And it helps me recognize those things that maybe other people don't recognize. Being a survivor of domestic violence is recognizable in a public setting, and it hurts. But I think the Creator has allowed me to go through a lot of this just to give me an understanding of where He put me today. And I thank Him for that. It helps me find the right words to say, or to have that empathy that I need to recognize a sick person. I know that there will be something found for cancer. I know there will. And I know that there will be something found for this pandemic that we're going through. I know that we have to be patient, but I know we have to do what we need to do to get well. What is happening to us now is that we get lonesome for assembling together because we're social animals. The last elders event that we had here, you could just hear the laughter. We're so happy to be back together. I want to thank you for listening to my personal story and how angry I was at tuberculosis, because I wasn't sick. I was just tired. But there was something wrong with me, and they took it out of my lung. But I was so angry, and I carried that anger for so long. So a disease just wrecks your whole life, even in ways that you don't understand until you look back at it. I'm so happy I'm this old. I'm 81 years old. I never thought I'd be this old. Katsy next to me calls me her oldest and dearest friend. So that makes me feel good. It's a good life, and I'm going to live the rest of my life. I'm through being angry. I guess when you get to be elderly, you get a little wisdom in your head. But I thank you for the time to come and talk about my personal life and how we were worried about the mental health of the people during the pandemic. But EOC, I want to give a shout out to EOC. They met every week, sometimes twice a week, and you had confidence in them that they were doing the best they could to take care of the Nimiipuu. Thank you, Kitsiao. That just gave me all kinds of comfort to know that you were at work taking care of us. And thank you for these series. I look forward to coming to the rest of them. Kitsiao.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Our final speaker is Katherine Jackson. Katherine Jackson was born and raised on the Nez Perce Reservation. She has long been a gatherer, hunter, and fisher, and was involved with the Rapid River controversy during the late 1970s, early 1980s. She attended Lewis Clark State College, where she took up welding. Taught by her aunt, she is also a cook, having provided meals for multiple programs, including the Head Start. Katherine, a mother and grandmother, continues leading her life as a traditionalist, carrying her culture forward, and is a designated whipwoman. Please welcome Katherine.
Yeah, again. I don't know where I'm supposed to start on all of this, of my illness or what. But one thing I heard Mary say was that she didn't know that she was that sick with that. When I got it, I knew I was sick. I felt it. And it didn't feel so good, but when I went up to the clinic, they told me to just go home and rest, that I had walking pneumonia, and go home, drink liquids, and just rest. But the next day, man, I couldn't even get up. They had to help me sit up to even stand. So this time they went and told my mother, she was alive then, and my other aunt, and they took me down emergency and demanded that they look better because it isn't pneumonia. The next day they finally start calling in some people, lung specialists, and they had just x-rays in. They didn't have those MRI deals, and they said they could see liquid building up in my lungs. So right away they thought they could just tend to me right there at St. Joseph's. All those doctors, they said, oh, we can probably just get a big needle and put it in your back and drain that out. Mary Jane was with me through all of this, so she got to witness all of that. But it didn't work. They couldn't do it that way. So the next thing I know, then they're rushing me up to Spokane to the tuberculosis hospital up there. I didn't stay as long as it, but I was getting like 20-some shots a day, plus liquid medicine. It was pretty bad. Like, took all your energy. That's what she felt, was that tiredness. That's what when I start getting better, I just kept feeling so tired. And I didn't really understand what that was either, that tuberculosis. I used to hear about the place we had in Lapway years ago. Then I heard about the Tacoma, where they used to send the other natives over there somewhere. There's quite a few in my age that have had this disease. Some of them aren't enrolled here, but they lived here all their life. I'm another one that got it, living in a, how do they say, multi-family home. But I'm the only one that got it. Out of all those people, I was intact with their every day, drinking and eating out of the same place and everything, but I was the only one that got sick. That was way different for being contagious. What else might I need to say? And the other subject I'd just like to get on is another one that we need to watch is our cancer. I've been fighting cancer since 2010. They said I was cleared up, but it came back big time. I feel bad for a lot of people. I try to be tough and not show what's going on, but you look around, you see these older people, and you know they're older than you, and they're still moving around. They're still doing something. Then it makes me feel guilty. I can't get sick. I can't kick back, man. Look at them. They're still going. Yeah, the first time I went through I had to go through chemo. It's bad stuff. They say it's the only way to do stuff, but it really messes your body up. And I did that for a while. They gave me other medicines. Then this last time it come back, they found it on my head, on my neck. And I had to do radiation treatment 6 weeks, every day, for 6 weeks. And right now they got me on a monthly thing that's working kind of good. I'm not in so much pain. But I just feel bad for the people that they can't get this help fast enough. They need to get this help on this cancer fast. People, I would like to warn all the people, if you got anything on your body that you know doesn't belong there, get it checked out. Because this stuff is ugly and it can start from anything. Anything. You could have a pimple on your nose, it could start from that. But just warnings to the people, because I wouldn't wish this on any of my enemies. It's that bad. I'm glad I got to talk about the sicknesses. I also, one time I got hepatitis, the contagious kind, and I was the only one that got that. And I was a bartender, and I had, like she said, party going on all the time, and they couldn't figure out how I was the only one that got that hepatitis. It's crazy. I don't know, maybe I just attract all the sicknesses. But these things are real. It's really hard to see our people get any of them. And just need to, I'm glad they're talking about it, make it aware. I see a lot of sisters and brothers I know that have been fighting with this cancer, but they almost seem like they're embarrassed about it. But they need to make more people aware of it, not hide it. Anything else? Did I forget anything? Oh, yeah. One thing I do keep up with, no matter what has been going on, even I can't hardly walk for a couple of years, but I still go out and pick huckleberries. That's my deal, is huckleberries. And every year I struggle out there, but I still go. It's just something that I guess that's part of my Indian in me yet, is still going for those berries. And the mountains is our healing things. Another thing I just seen not too long ago, they finally figured out what kush is. Titokan, they already knew what kush was years and years ago. It's one of our healers. It's our medicine. Kush is strong. Chikawas. Well, I guess that's about all I got to say. I went into more things here. We could be here for a long time. Me and Aunt will get shot up here. We can really reminisce. Well, that's about all I got to say. I didn't really know what anybody wanted me to say, so it just nudging me here to. Oh yeah, another thing too is that a long time ago we had our medicine people. My whole family from my grandmother's side was medicine people. They lived off the roots and stuff. They cooked those for your stomach aches or anything else that they did. They used to have the medicine dances across at Grandma Wolitz's. But I believed in that because they did things when I was little, like for earache. The grandmas would do something for your earache. Or if you had a stomach ache, they'd fix you up some kind of deal. And it's sad that I can't remember all those, what they were and what they did. But I know that they worked because God them used on me. Eat bread and run over a skunk. Well, I guess that's it. That's all I got to say, and I'm glad you folks are doing this. Try to get something out to the rest of the people. Because a lot of things here, some of us sit back, we don't even know what's going on with the tribe or anybody. I'm one of them. Unless it comes and directly tells me something, I don't pay attention. Because, well, you know, a lot of it's where it's at. Katsiao yo kalo.
I just want to thank all three of you for sharing your information, the history, the personal stories, and it's so relevant right now in dealing with this pandemic and COVID-19. And Mary Jane really talked about how it impacts more than just your health. It has this ripple effect to so many different things in your life and things you probably wouldn't think of. And everybody's been impacted by this in some way. But I think it provides some level of comfort knowing that our ancestors also faced this, dealt with it, and many survived. We have warriors and survivors here. So I'm glad they were able to share this with you. And that does wrap up our session for this first series. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I do want to thank the Enterprises and the Clearwater River Casino and staff for putting this together and providing some wonderful food, so thank you. I do also want to note that we will be having another speaker series in the near future, and you can see that flyer on your table there. That will be June 9th, and we will have Doug Nash presenting on the topic of reflections on 50 years of tribal law. So I hope that you can join us on that date as well, and we'll be back here and have some more delicious food. In the meantime, thank you, presenters, and everybody have a wonderful evening.